Imagine this. You meet someone new. Their smile feels warm, their tone is gentle, and every word they speak seems to wrap itself around you like a comforting blanket. They listen intently, laugh at your jokes, and make you feel like you matter. For a moment, it feels as if the universe has conspired to place a rare soul in your path, someone who sees you, understands you, and accepts you without judgment. But then, subtly, almost invisibly, something shifts. The warmth begins to feel calculated. The compliments, once disarming, start to sound rehearsed. Their kindness is no longer a gift, but a lure. You sense a hidden hook beneath the honeyed words, though you cannot yet name it. And deep inside, a haunting question rises. Why do people act nice first, only to reveal something darker later? This is the paradox that has unsettled human beings for centuries. Niceness, that sweet mask of acceptance, is often not what it seems. For some, it is a bridge to connection. For others, it is a carefully designed entry point to control, to manipulation, to hidden desires that dare not show their face at the beginning. Why does this happen? Why does human interaction so often begin with kindness, only to descend into something more complicated, more dangerous, or even more destructive? Think of the patterns you've seen in your own life. The friend who appeared supportive but quietly kept a tally of your flaws. The colleague who showered you with praise, only to undermine you when it mattered most. The lover who made you feel like the center of their world in the beginning, only to withdraw affection once they felt secure in your devotion. It is as if life itself whispers this riddle. They act nice first, but what comes after? And here lies the unsettling truth. You cannot escape it, because this pattern is written into the very fabric of human psychology. Niceness can be genuine, yes, but it can also be strategy. It can be instinct. It can even be survival. Pause for a moment and feel the weight of that realization. How many of your most important memories, your friendships, your heartbreaks, your betrayals, began with that sweet, disarming gesture of kindness? The warm hand extended in friendship, the first compliment that made you feel seen, the gentle voice that told you, "You're different, you matter." And yet, beneath that beginning, something was already waiting. Perhaps it was not malice, but insecurity, the kind of person who cloaks themselves in kindness because they fear rejection, and later reveal their bitterness when they no longer feel the need to hide. Perhaps it was not cruelty, but hunger, the subtle drive to get something from you, approval, resources, validation, power. Or perhaps it was deception, the predator's ancient art of hiding their claws until you've already let them too close. Doesn't this make you wonder how much of human niceness is real and how much is performance? How often are we, without realizing, characters in someone else's hidden script? You see, this question is not just about social games. It cuts deeper. It touches the core of human existence itself, because every relationship, every bond, every alliance begins with that fragile opening act, a smile, a gesture, an act of kindness. And yet, that very beginning may conceal the seed of betrayal. This is the paradox we must wrestle with. The same smile that welcomes you into belonging may also be the one that blinds you to danger. The same warmth that promises love may also mask dependency, control, or fear. The same kindness that makes you feel alive may also be the very tool used to bind you in chains. Why? Why must human interaction be so double-edged, so precarious, so unstable? Perhaps the deeper question is not, why are they nice first? But why do we fall for niceness so easily? Why does a simple gesture of kindness pierce through our defenses, disarm our suspicions, and make us hand over trust so quickly? What is it about us, our psychology, our longing, our loneliness, that makes us so vulnerable to this dance of masks? Imagine looking back on your life and realizing that some of the most painful chapters began with a smile. Imagine understanding, too late, that the tenderness you welcomed into your heart was merely a prelude, a carefully staged act before the truth emerged. If that thought unsettles you, it should. Because until you uncover the hidden machinery behind this paradox, until you understand why niceness so often hides a darker truth, you will remain blind to it. You will keep falling into the same patterns, entranced by the sweetness of beginnings, only to wake up disillusioned by what follows. So here we stand, at the edge of a difficult truth. The truth that not all kindness is pure. The truth that not all smiles mean safety. The truth that behind the gentlest beginnings may lie the sharpest endings. But if this is true, what does it mean for you? How do you tell the difference between sincerity and manipulation? Between warmth and strategy? Between the kindness that heals and the kindness that hides a knife? That is the great question, the one we will descend into layer by layer. For the answer lies buried deep in psychology, in philosophy, and in the very shadows of human nature itself. And if you dare to keep going, you may find not just an explanation, but a mirror, one that reflects not only the motives of others, but also the hidden strategies you yourself have used, often without realizing. Because here is the unsettling possibility. It's not only them, it's also you. Now look closer. The pattern you've glimpsed, the warmth that precedes the storm, is not merely a quirk of individual behavior. It is woven into the very architecture of human nature. To understand it, we must step beyond the surface of manners and social niceties and descend into the shadowy territory where psychology and philosophy converge. Carl Jung once spoke of the persona, the mask we wear to navigate society. But the persona is not reserved for one party alone. It exists in everyone. When someone acts nice, they are performing a role, consciously or unconsciously, crafted to gain trust, affection, or influence. You, in turn, respond to that performance with your own mask of receptivity, shaped by longing, hope, or fear of isolation. In essence, you are both actors on a stage you barely notice, one trying to conceal, the other drawn to believe. This is not trivial. Jung would remind us that failing to recognize these masks leaves us vulnerable to projection, the tendency to see in others what we hope or fear in ourselves. We project trust where there is caution, innocence where there is calculation, and loyalty where there is opportunism. But it is not only the realm of psychology. Philosophers have long observed the contradictions in human interaction. Friedrich Nietzsche described the will to power as an underlying drive behind all action, even the seemingly benign. When someone appears kind at first, Nietzsche might argue, it is not purely altruism. It is a strategic exertion of influence, an effort to position themselves where they can extract something, whether it is admiration, control, or emotional leverage. Consider Schopenhauer's reflections on human desire. We are perpetually drawn to what gratifies us, yet this attraction blinds us to danger. Niceness functions as a lure because it appeals directly to our innate desire for safety, acceptance, and love. You are biologically wired to respond to warmth. Your neural circuits release dopamine, signaling pleasure and security. And so, the very mechanisms that allow social bonding can be exploited. Aldous Huxley warned of the seduction of appearances. In Brave New World, he depicted a society lulled into compliance by charm and comfort, blinded to the mechanisms of control. What is true in dystopian fiction is true in everyday life. People are more likely to follow kindness than coercion. Niceness is seductive because it promises alignment with our deepest needs, even when it is a tool for manipulation. Jean-Paul Sartre adds another layer: authenticity. Sartre believed that humans often hide their freedom behind roles, seeking to impose meaning on interactions rather than confront the raw reality of existence. Someone acting nice first may be attempting to assert control over their own anxieties, creating a world in which their influence feels necessary and secure. Their niceness is a strategy to stabilize their own existence, even if it destabilizes yours. Viktor Frankl, writing from the depths of human suffering, reminds us that people often act in ways that conceal their existential anxieties. A smile, a compliment, a seemingly effortless charm, these are shields against the terror of insignificance, loneliness, and rejection. It is not always malevolence, sometimes it is fear. But fear, when unexamined, can lead to harm. And here lies the hidden problem. The world does not reward raw honesty. It rewards performance. Social, cultural, and evolutionary pressures condition humans to cloak their intentions behind gestures of niceness. From childhood, we are taught to appease, to smile, to mirror, and to trust appearances. Society conditions us to assume goodwill, even when it is absent. This conditioning is subtle, yet relentless. Cognitive psychologists describe confirmation bias, the tendency to seek evidence that supports our beliefs and ignore evidence that contradicts them. When someone acts nice, your mind immediately seeks proof of their benevolence. You interpret ambiguous actions as positive, reinforcing your trust even when danger lurks beneath. At the same time, your early experiences shape the template of your social expectations. If, as a child, trust was often rewarded, you may be more susceptible to seeing kindness as safe. If trust was betrayed, you may oscillate between suspicion and desperation for approval. Both extremes make you prey to the same pattern, the initial charm that precedes manipulation. The philosophical and psychological truths converge here. Human behavior is complex, layered, and often contradictory. Niceness is rarely absolute. It is a signal, a strategy, a reflection of inner need, and sometimes a harbinger of harm. And you, in responding, are both observer and participant, drawn to the warmth, yet unknowingly stepping into the shadow. You begin to understand the deeper consequences. This is not merely about social missteps or occasional disappointment. This is about the silent architecture of influence, the invisible forces that shape your emotions, decisions, and very identity. It is about how trust can be weaponized and how intimacy, that most sacred human need, can be subverted. And the unsettling realization sinks in. Most people are not consciously evil. Most are responding to their own fears, desires, and survival instincts. Yet, even without malevolence, their niceness can wound, control, or mislead. The hidden problem, therefore, is not just the other person, it is the interplay of instincts, expectations, and societal conditioning. The problem is systemic, woven into the fabric of human existence and nearly invisible until the consequences hit. So the question arises, heavier now than before. If the problem is both within them and within you, is there any way to see the truth before it unfolds? This is where the story deepens, because the unseen forces we have just traced do not merely influence individual encounters. They shape the world around you in ways subtle, profound, and often irreversible. And it is here, in the silent manipulation of perception and desire, that the next revelation waits, about consequences that are invisible yet devastating. Now, consider the ripple effect. The initial act of niceness, the smile, the compliment, the warmth, is only the first move in a much larger, almost invisible game. What begins as simple charm can shape not just a single interaction, but your perception, your choices, and even the architecture of your life. Humans are wired to respond to kindness, but our brains are also wired to trust patterns. Neuropsychologists explain that the amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, reacts more slowly to subtle manipulations than to overt danger. In other words, your instincts for survival are excellent at detecting a punch or a scream, but far less efficient at recognizing the slow erosion of trust hidden behind smiles. The consequence is that by the time you sense danger, it is often already embedded into your emotional reality. Think of a relationship, romantic, professional, or even friendly, that began with charm. At first, everything feels effortless. You are drawn in, your defenses lowered, your brain releasing dopamine every time they acknowledge you, admire you, or make you feel special. But gradually, subtle shifts occur. Your opinions are questioned, your boundaries are tested, your energy is drained. And because the initial interactions were positive, your mind struggles to reconcile the growing discomfort with the comforting memory of their early kindness. This is cognitive dissonance at work, the silent sculptor of confusion and self-doubt. Cultural conditioning compounds this effect. From childhood, we are taught that to reject kindness is impolite, ungrateful, even immoral. We internalize the idea that people deserve trust until proven otherwise. Social psychologists call this the norm of reciprocity, the instinctive pull to return a favor or goodwill. When someone acts nice first, this norm activates almost automatically, compelling you to respond in kind, even when intuition whispers caution. Your brain, honoring social rules, becomes a conduit for manipulation, often without conscious awareness. The consequences extend beyond individual interactions. They infiltrate your self-perception. You start questioning yourself. Am I overreacting? Am I imagining problems? Maybe I'm too sensitive. This self-doubt, seeded by the hidden agenda behind initial niceness, slowly rewires your emotional landscape. Trust becomes a gamble, suspicion becomes default, and your sense of authenticity is gradually corroded. Neurologically, this pattern creates reinforcement loops. Dopamine rewards you for perceiving kindness, serotonin reinforces social bonding, and cortisol, stress hormones, respond when boundaries are violated. The brain cannot distinguish between intentional malice and subconscious manipulation. It only registers the emotional pattern. Over time, this repeated cycle can leave you anxious, hypervigilant, or addicted to the highs and lows of relational reward and betrayal. On a societal level, these dynamics shape communities, workplaces, and cultures. Leaders who act nice first often accumulate power effortlessly. Charismatic influencers exploit trust before revealing their demands or biases. Social networks amplify these patterns, privileging charm and appearance over integrity. The unseen consequences are vast. Systems built on performance rather than authenticity, norms shaped by manipulation, and populations subtly conditioned to respond to the surface rather than the essence. But the most intimate consequences are personal and psychological. When the initial niceness is followed by subtle harm, control, betrayal, emotional withdrawal, it triggers trauma loops. The mind encodes patterns of danger where pleasure once existed. Future interactions are interpreted through the lens of past experiences. You may develop hypersensitivity, constantly scanning for the hidden motives behind smiles, or conversely numbness, shutting down empathy to avoid repeated pain. Either response is a survival mechanism, but both are costly. One traps you in anxiety, the other in disconnection. And here is the cruel irony. The people who acted nice first rarely change. They are often unaware or unwilling to recognize the full impact of their behavior. They move on, leaving you with lessons learned the hard way, a mixture of insight and residue, a map of human complexity etched in your nervous system. Yet the consequences are not entirely negative. The very fact that you are affected means you are capable of learning. You are capable of recognizing patterns, of dissecting interactions, of reclaiming control over perception. Awareness is the first weapon against the unseen trap. But until that awareness is cultivated, the consequences remain stealthy and relentless, silently influencing your choices, relationships, and even your sense of identity. This is why the question of early niceness is not trivial. It is not simply about manners or social etiquette. It is about the invisible currents that shape your mind, your emotions, and ultimately your life path. Every handshake, every compliment, every gesture of kindness is a potential thread in a larger web, a web that can nurture or ensnare depending on whether you recognize it. You begin to see the stakes. The initial smile, seemingly harmless, can determine your emotional trajectory, your sense of self-worth, and the boundaries you establish or fail to establish. It can subtly dictate which voices you trust, which opportunities you pursue, and which relationships become the pillars or prisons of your life. And yet, for all the danger, there is hope. The unseen consequences, though powerful, are not inevitable. They only persist as long as you remain unconscious of them. Once illuminated by awareness, patterns can be interrupted. Loops can be broken. The cycle of subtle manipulation can be transformed into mastery over perception and influence. But first, you must understand the depth of the trap. You must feel the gravity of the unseen, the quiet erosion of trust, the neurological and psychological architecture that has kept you ensnared. Only then can the rebellion begin, the conscious act of reclaiming agency over your mind, your emotions, and your interactions. Because after the unseen consequences, After the recognition of the pattern comes the most crucial step, rebellion. Now imagine standing at the edge of this invisible web, feeling the weight of manipulation, cognitive traps, and subtle betrayals pressing in from every side. You've traced the pattern from the first smile to the quiet erosion of trust, and you've seen the consequences reflected in your own doubts, anxieties, and fractured self-perception. But here is the paradox. The very awareness of the trap is the first crack in its cage. Rebellion begins with perception. The first act of defiance is not confrontation, argument, or punishment. It is noticing. You must see the performance of niceness for what it is, a strategy, a reflection of the other person's inner world, and often a mirror of your own desires and vulnerabilities. As Jung might put it, you must separate the persona from the self, recognizing that every outward gesture can have hidden motives, and that not every kindness is owed unquestioning trust. But noticing alone is not enough. To break free, you must cultivate a radical form of skepticism, a clarity that does not harden into cynicism. Nietzsche offers a framework here. He champions the creation of one's own values, independent of external performance. Applied to human interaction, this means evaluating gestures of kindness according to your own standards, not merely your emotional reaction or social conditioning. You decide what is acceptable and what is suspect. You are no longer a passive participant in someone else's script. You become the author of your own. A practical shift begins with boundaries. Many people fall into the trap of early niceness because they do not define what is permissible before trust is earned. Setting limits, emotional, temporal, physical, is not aggression. It is a declaration of autonomy. It signals to others without words that your attention, energy, and loyalty are not automatic commodities. They are gifts given deliberately after observation and evaluation. Historical examples of this rebellion are everywhere. Consider the leaders, thinkers, and revolutionaries who recognized manipulation disguised as charm and refused to participate unconsciously. Their power was not merely in resistance, it was in the conscious redirection of influence. By refusing to be drawn in by initial niceness, they reclaimed agency, preserving clarity, energy, and freedom. Psychologically, this rebellion involves cultivating emotional literacy. You must learn to recognize the subtle cues that reveal hidden motives. Micro-expressions of irritation under the smile, inconsistencies between words and actions, or the quiet pressure to overcommit in response to praise. Cognitive psychologists call this pattern detection, training your mind to see beneath the surface of social performance. Each recognition is a small act of liberation, a recalibration of trust and perception. Rebellion also demands self-awareness. Often we are drawn to manipulative niceness because it activates our own unmet needs, the desire for approval, validation, or connection. By examining these impulses without judgment, you reduce their power. Meditation, reflection, journaling. These are tools for disentangling your inner vulnerabilities from external influence. Once you can distinguish what you genuinely desire from what is imposed or coaxed, manipulation loses its grip. But perhaps the most radical act of rebellion is the recalibration of expectation. Many are trapped by an unconscious assumption that kindness must precede harm, or that warmth is inherently trustworthy. Rewriting this narrative allows you to approach every interaction with discernment, not defensiveness, curiosity, not naivety, and empathy without surrendering sovereignty. The rebellion is not about suspicion, paranoia, or isolation. It is about mastery. It is the conscious decision to honor your own mind and emotions while navigating the complex, often deceptive social landscape. It is the art of seeing charm, warmth, and niceness as signals rather than guarantees, as invitations to observe rather than to surrender. Imagine now the freedom this grants. When you encounter niceness, you do not react reflexively. You notice, you assess, you protect your boundaries, and you allow your own values and instincts to guide your response. You become an observer and participant simultaneously, a presence of clarity in the midst of performance. And there is a deeper, almost poetic power in this. By breaking free from the unconscious pull of early charm, you not only protect yourself, you transform your relationships. You attract people whose kindness is genuine, whose intentions align with integrity, and whose warmth is not a prelude to manipulation. You no longer expend energy deciphering hidden agendas. Instead, you engage in authentic interaction, conscious choice, and deliberate trust. This is the essence of the rebellion, not merely survival but mastery, not merely resistance, but the creation of a new relational landscape, one where you are no longer vulnerable to subtle traps, yet still capable of deep connection. It is the act of claiming your perception, your energy, and your freedom. And yet, even after this rebellion, a question remains, a deeper, final realization that transcends strategy, boundaries, and awareness. Because mastery over influence, while powerful, is only a prelude to understanding the ultimate truth about human behavior, kindness, and trust. The final revelation awaits, the insight that transforms past wounds into wisdom and reshapes the way you view every gesture, every smile, every act of niceness in the world around you. Now, imagine standing alone after having traced the arc from the first smile to subtle manipulation, from unseen consequences to rebellion. You have seen the web. You have broken free. You have sharpened your perception, fortified your boundaries, and reclaimed your agency. Yet the deepest truth is still waiting, an insight that transforms everything you thought you knew about human behavior, trust, and connection. Here is the ultimate revelation. The cycle of niceness followed by harm is not merely about others. It is not merely about manipulation or strategy. It is about life itself and the mirror it holds up to your own psyche. The gestures of warmth and charm that entangle you reflect not only the intentions of the other person, but also the vulnerabilities, desires, and expectations you carry within. Niceness is seductive because it touches something ancient and fragile inside you, the yearning to belong, to be seen, to be valued. It exploits the tension between your innate social instincts and your untested discernment. Every smile that precedes betrayal is, in a way, a mirror of your own longing, your own incomplete understanding of yourself, and your untrained ability to navigate the hidden depths of human intention. Philosophically, this truth echoes the insights of Sartre and Frankl. Sartre argued that humans often live in bad faith, surrendering their freedom to external scripts, social expectations, and the illusions of other people. Frankl suggested that meaning is found not in the gestures of others, but in the choices you make in response to life's challenges. The ultimate truth is that the power of niceness, the danger of hidden motives, and the shadow of manipulation are all external forces, but their impact is determined entirely by your awareness, your values, and your self-mastery. Consider this. Every encounter, every act of charm, every first smile is neither wholly good nor wholly bad. It is a test of perception, a reflection of your inner landscape, and an invitation to consciousness. Once you see this, the world changes. You no longer feel victimized by initial niceness or betrayed by hidden agendas. Instead, you engage with life as a conscious architect of experience, discerning without paranoia, connecting without surrender, and trusting without naivety. This realization carries a paradoxical freedom. You can honor kindness without surrendering your sovereignty. You can respond to warmth without being ensnared. You can experience connection without losing clarity. And in that clarity lies the profound liberation of the human spirit, the ability to navigate complexity without being destroyed by it. But the truth cuts deeper still. The cycle of niceness and harm is, in essence, a reflection of impermanence. Everything in life is dual, light and shadow, love and fear, warmth and withdrawal. No act of kindness is guaranteed, no gesture of charm absolute. By confronting this, you awaken to the existential reality that trust, like everything else, is both fragile and powerful, dangerous and necessary. To live fully, you must embrace this duality. To engage with the world, you must dance on the knife edge of vulnerability and discernment. And so the most radical shift occurs not in others but in you. You realize that mastery over influence, awareness of hidden motives, and discernment of niceness are not merely defensive tools. They are the keys to deeper human experience. They allow you to approach relationships, society, and even your own psyche with courage, clarity, and authenticity. You are no longer pulled by surface charm, no longer blinded by performance, and no longer trapped by expectation. You are fully awake. Imagine a life where a smile does not automatically disarm you, but instead invites curiosity. Imagine responding to praise without surrendering, to kindness without losing your boundaries, to warmth without confusion. Imagine the liberation of seeing every gesture as a signal rather than a guarantee, a reflection rather than a verdict. This is the ultimate truth. The world will continue to present charm, niceness, and manipulation. Some will act kind to influence you. Some will act warm out of fear or insecurity. Some will act genuinely in the purest expression of care. The difference is not in their behavior, it is in you, your awareness, your choice, your perception, your willingness to confront reality without illusions. And in that realization, a final cinematic clarity emerges. The past, with all its entanglements and betrayals, becomes a teacher rather than a wound. Every encounter that once confused or hurt you now serves as a map of human complexity. Every smile that concealed motives now becomes a lesson in discernment, empathy, and self-mastery. You are no longer at the mercy of appearances. You are the conscious observer, the architect of experience, the master of your own mind. Life, then, is not about avoiding manipulation. It is about awakening to the duality of every gesture, embracing the dance of perception and reality, and discovering the profound freedom in conscious choice. Niceness will continue to come first, as it always does, but now you see it for what it is, a signal, a reflection, an invitation, and never ever a guarantee. And in that awakening, you find something rarer than trust or safety. You find sovereignty over your own life, clarity in the face of charm, and the courage to meet the world fully awake. Because the ultimate truth is this: the power of the first smile is never in their hands. It has always been in yours.